Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today I have 5 9.8 comics I should be buying now. And these ones would fit so well in my collection, but I do not have them. Hence the kind of, I should be buying now title. So let's have a look. First one is a Spawn number 230 in a 9.8. Grade 9.8 Batman 423 cover homage by Todd McFarlane. This one has trended up in value over time, and it seems to be, holding its value quite well. There's not too many of them in the sort of blue label 9.8, so you don't see too many sales. But great collector item, and I think, given that the 423 9.8s are about $3,000 right now, I'd expect them to cool down like a little bit, but maybe this one's just a little bit undervalued. It is so cool. And there's only 78 in a blue label, a 1 of 78. There's quite a few signature series. I think there's more in the signature series. But a 1 of 78's looking great to me. A 28.5% to 9.8 ratio. Great ratio for, book. I think this one came out in 2013. I might be remembering that one wrong. But such a great one if you're a big Batman 423 fan like myself. Prices on a Spawn, $230. Quite a few I'd recently sold in the last few months. There's only 78 of them, so not a ton are going to be selling, but $799.99. So $800. I think occasionally you see some go over that. You wait in an auction, maybe you get this one a little closer to $700. But a Spawn 230, just a great collector item. If you're a McFarlane fan like myself, probably should have added this one. I remember some auctions. It would have been about 2 years ago, even a year and a half. Well, maybe not a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago. This one going in the kind of 275 range, maybe a little over 300. So, even if this one's kind of cooling down around 700, it's done well so far, and I would, expect it to continue to do well. And I actually, looking on the census this morning, a 1 of 78, I didn't know that there were less than 100 of these in the super high grade blue label. So I feel like it's a bit undervalued, especially if you're a big McFarlane fan. Let's call it right around that $800 being a pretty fair value for a Spawn 230 in a 9.8. Great one. Okay, next one, Uncanny X-Men 133, or X-Men 133 in a 9.8. You get the great kind of solo Wolverine cover. The first solo Wolverine story on this one as well, and it does predate Wolverine limited series. So this one's just really heavily collected by Wolverine fans. Another one that has trended up well over time, absolutely, and is kind of hanging in there as well. Another one where there's not a ton of them, so I was kind of having trouble finding some very recent sales. But there's 283 9.8s in a blue label for this one. This one being like a 1980 book. I'm pretty sure it came out in 1980. 12.8%, the 9.8 ratio. Recent sales price $1,579, and I think that was a month or so ago, maybe a little bit longer. And the market's cooling down. I would expect this one to maybe cool down a little bit as well, but right around the kind of a little bit over 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 range. I think this one is still totally worth it, and such a cool one. Kind of a no-brainer to just go with some big Wolverine key issues in a 9.8. This one has absolutely trended up well over time. Used to recommend this one. I made a lot of videos on this one in the past, 2 or 3 years, and it was, around 400 there if you get back in time, and they were 500 to 600 for quite a long time too, and then kind of blew up with everything during COVID. Still kind of hanging in there though, and I think a little bit closer to 1,000 on this one in a direct edition. Newsstands, you're going to be a little bit more money, probably under 1,500 in a newsstand is going to be tough to get. But would be great in a newsstand as well. So Uncanny X-Men 133, great 9.8 to think about. Next one is New Teen Titans number 2, first appearance of Deathstroke the Terminator. I'm a big Batman fan, like my Batman villains certainly. And this is one that I have not added to my collection though, and it's recently has done well with, unfortunately George Perez passing away. This is a big George Perez key issue. Absolutely. Great cover. 740, 9.8s in a blue label. A 1 is 740 for like a big, really popular key issue, so you'd expect there to be a lot of these out there. Big DC key of the 1980s, 13.8%, the 9.8 ratio. And I saw one sell recently for $1,026. Seems to be more of these kind of out there being sold right now, and I think with George Perez passing, unfortunately, like, you know, the demand is up a little bit, and then you have sellers wanting to, you know, get rid of their books at a higher price than what they've normally, you know, been. So that's kind of the situation. But I feel like this one's cooling down a bit. Like this 1,026 is a decent price. I think they've gone, you know, in his immediate passing around that time, it was they were 1,300. I saw this one go 1,400 during that time. So already cooling down a little bit. You know, maybe it cools down a bit more. You get it under $1,000 in a direct edition. You know, a little, you know, 1,100 for like a newsstand or something would be pretty fantastic, I think, as well. On a Teen Titans number 2, probably should be buying this one. Probably should have bought this one when it's trended up well over time, and you know, it's one of those books that has recently done well. It actually didn't spike up like a lot of other books. It was kind of like 500 to 600 for quite a long time there, even in 2020. But it eventually started to do well, and it you know, at about $1,000 now. It's trending up over time, so a pretty great one to consider. A Teen Titans 2 in a 9.8. Yeah, definitely like an investment grade 9.8. All these books are pretty much, you know, great investment grade books that would fit right into my collection, but for one reason or another, I hadn't kind of pulled the trigger over time. But next one here, Uncanny X-Men 266. First full appearance of Gambit. Yeah, a cover I really remember. I have a raw copy of this one from kind of my childhood, basically, and a cover I really remember, and I should have grabbed this one over time. I feel like, for some reason, you know, every one that kind of pops up in Canada and seems like an opportunity for me seems to be like off-centered or something that's just annoying about it for me. So I haven't just it's just not one that's happened for me, unfortunately. But a great 9.8 in the 90s. Yeah, I made that 1990s video not too long ago, and I forgot to mention Uncanny X-Men 266 on that one. But there's 3,156 9.8s, so kind of typical that the early 90s, there's going to be a ton of them. And 18.8%, the 9.8 ratio, which is not too bad actually for an early 90s comic. Recent sales, $839 and $850. And maybe this one's, you know, maybe it's getting to 800 to 750 or so, with the market kind of cooling down just in the short term here. And I think these sales were about, you know, a couple weeks old on eBay sales. So, you know, 839, 850, maybe under 800, like in the 750 range, I think would be a pretty great deal on an Uncanny X-Men 266. That one was, you know, 1,500, 1,600 peak, you know, during the hot COVID market, and it's cooling down quite a bit, but just a big key from the early 90s you want to think about if you're serious about 9.8s. And last one here, DC Comics Presents number 26. Touched on this one recently off and on. A great DC 9.8. Really have kind of wanted this one over time, made quite a few videos recommending it, but never got to pull the trigger, unfortunately. And it, you know, it's kind of cooling down in price a bit, but it got really expensive there. Whereas in 2019, this one was like $600, $550, $600, similar to the Teen Titans 2 book, the first Deathstroke, the Terminator book. But I think this one over time has done a little bit better as a like comic book investment in a 9.8. DC Comics presents a big George Perez key as well. It's a first appearance of Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire, and the new Teen Titans in preview. There's 499 9.8s in a blue label, 13.1%. The 9.8 ratio, recent sale on that one. This was pretty recent too on a Comic Link auction, $1,580. And quite a few of these had went around that $2,000 level, and even over that, you know, for a minute there when the comic book market was really hot, but cooling down a little bit finally. So, you know, hopefully this one gets a little closer to 1,000 over time, and maybe at that price I'd be able to get in there and grab this one. But if you like your DC key issues and you're serious about 9.8s, I feel like you probably just want to get in there now. If you could get it under 1,500 in a direct edition, looking pretty awesome in a 9.8, I think that's a fantastic buy. Even if it falls down a little bit more, you know, a great one to have and enjoy, and I think over time it's going to be a one to want for DC 9.8 fans in the 1980s. Okay, just a short list of 5 that I was thinking, you know, what are 5 9.8s that you can invest in that I just don't have in my collection that, you know, I should pretty much be buying now. So I think a pretty great list to consider, the short list here of 5. Okay, we'll leave it at that, team. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. If you're liking my content, please subscribe and hit that bell. and I'll keep you updated on future videos.